Hello everyone, and welcome to Election Speakout. My name is Leah McMahon. I'm a business owner, author, and entrepreneur here in East County. Joining me this evening is Matt Wand, my state representative and personal friend. In addition to Matt's deep and abiding love for coffee at my business, Silk Espresso, I can tell you that he was born and raised here. He's a friend of my husband's, and to borrow from the Willamette Week saying, he does believe that East County is the center of the universe. I don't know that we can ask for much more from our state representatives. So Matt, tell us about your first term in legislation and some of the items you've been working on for us.
Well, thank you, Leah. You know, 2 years ago, when I asked our neighbors to send me to Salem on their behalf, what I talked about was building a stronger community. I believe that we are the center of the universe, and that it's my job to send that message to Salem. But we can build a stronger community by focusing on jobs, public safety, and education. And that's what I did. In the area of jobs, we worked on the enterprise zone law and some other bills that we'll talk about. In public safety, we worked on an elder abuse bill. What we found out tragically is that the elderly, who are sometimes vulnerable, are receiving care, were being taken advantage of, and that district attorneys and others that are supposed to be there to help didn't have the tools that they needed to help these vulnerable people in our community. And we passed a sweeping change to that area of the law that will protect seniors in our community. I was also proud to work on foreclosure reform. One of the things we know is that empty houses can often be a location for various crimes, and also we know it's very tragic when people are subject to foreclosure. We initially had a bill that came from the Senate that we knew from experience in other states wouldn't help the majority of folks that are facing foreclosure. So I worked on that bill in the House to do a couple of things. One of the things we did is allow a waiver for a $250 fee for mediation, because goodness knows, these folks don't have $250. That's why they're looking at a foreclosure square in the eye. And the second thing I did, I just believed strongly that any foreclosure reform needed to help everybody. And just this week, the state of Oregon put up their website for mortgage counseling, which was an idea that I championed together with Representative Gene Wisnett. Now, this is funded by the settlement with the Attorney General. It's fully funded, and folks that are facing foreclosure can go and learn what their rights are. Maybe going to a mediation is the best thing for them. Maybe there's another option. But it's important for people in that situation to know what their rights are, what their options are, and we made that happen.
Now, specifically on education, I know there were some very promising bipartisan reforms that occurred during your term. Can you tell us more about those?
Sure. You know, I've spent a little bit of time in the Reynolds School District over the course of my life. So, class of '93, go Raiders. And I volunteered at Reynolds High School. And I know, just like most of the people in our community know, that 30 to 40 students in a classroom just doesn't work. And one of the reasons why we have such a hard time getting class sizes smaller is that we have unfunded mandates from Salem that cost money, but they never come with extra funding. And so we passed a bill that removed over a dozen of those just in the short session this year. And I was proud to support that bill. We also know that in times of economic uncertainty, we kind of have these peaks and valleys in education funding, and it's very damaging and harmful. So I promised, when I asked for votes 2 years ago, that the K-12 education budget would be the first budget passed, and I delivered on that promise. That indeed was what we did. It gave our school district more time before the beginning of the school year to figure out how to make ends meet. But we also knew that the general revenues weren't enough. And we have an education stability fund that is designed specifically for times of economic uncertainty. It requires a few extra votes more than the majority in order to use those funds. But I voted in favor of that to make sure that we didn't slide backwards. And lastly, you know, there's an issue of equity that I think goes on. It's one thing for folks maybe that live in wealthier areas to talk about school choice, because if they want to go to a different school, well, they can sell their house even at a loss and move someplace else. They have those options because they're a little more stable, but many of the folks in our community don't have those options, and they don't have that wealth. And it just seems to me that every student has the ability to learn, and that there's the right educational opportunity for everybody. And it's incumbent on us to pass bills and reforms to make sure that parents working together with their children can find the best educational opportunities, and we did that.
That's excellent. Anything to add on achievement compacts?
Yes, you know, the governor worked hard to put down markers that our parents, that our community members can read, and those are achievement compacts. Now they're working on them right now to put down in writing exactly where the Reynolds School District will be in the coming years. And I was proud that Reynolds is one of the districts that set some of the highest goals for themselves, because that's how we know as parents and as community members that the Reynolds School District is serious about turning itself around and providing the best education for our students.
And they did well, didn't they? I know job creation is a big catchphrase right now, and you've had some good success for our region, but what can you tell us about what's being done to help address our unemployment?
You know, creating jobs is something that is critically important in our community. You see, for years, our leaders, going back to when we were in grade school, were told that they had to think regionally. And what that meant is that oftentimes our leaders would make decisions that help people on the west side. Well, now it's time for the entire region to make decisions to help us, because we have the available industrial land and we need help getting it developed. The enterprise zones law brought the FedEx facility into Troutdale, 700 jobs, family wage jobs that are good, strong, stable. And the enterprise zone law was set to expire. And so I was proud to work together with people across the aisle to extend it for another 12 years. But one of the things that I get to do as a state representative, in addition to passing laws, is help facilitate new businesses. And I helped locate Pressure Safe into Wood Village. There's a dozen jobs there now, family wage jobs, and they're expanding. And that is we build in a stair-step manner with that. And thirdly, you know, you really can't have jobs in East County without the proper infrastructure. And we had some funding for improvements at the I-84 interchange, but we were short. And so I worked together with Representative Matthews and others from Gresham, and we were able to secure the final piece of that funding package. And they should break ground within a year, which will both create construction jobs in the short term, but will also provide us with the opportunity to move freight through the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, which is what we need in order to create jobs there. So those are the types of things that I was working on. And there's one last bill that's near and dear to my heart. You know, lottery sends money, economic development money, to the counties directly because it makes sense. The counties know where that money needs to be spent to help their communities. They're closer to the people. But for years, we couldn't figure out how they were spending the money. And there was no accountability requirements. And so we were able to pass a bill that requires every county to post online at the Transparency in Government website how they're spending economic development money from the lottery. And now we can go online and look and see what projects are being funded in our county. And I was very proud of that, and that's how that money really ought to be spent.
Should be proud of that. Crime is a real concern in East County. I know as a business owner I'm concerned about it, and particularly gangs. What can you tell us about how you're helping to keep families in East County safe?
Well, every 2 years, the state is asked to fund a multi-jurisdictional gang enforcement team. We call it MGET. And every 2 years it's a battle. And this year, Representative Matthews from Gresham and I teamed up on the House side to make sure that we didn't lose that funding, because we know that Gresham and Fairview and Troutdale and Multnomah County working together do the best job to fight gangs in our community. Secondly, we make sure that the new courthouse has funding for furniture, but it doesn't provide all the services that I want it to provide. See, I don't believe that women in our community should have to travel downtown to get a restraining order. Mm-hmm. I think that's too far. And they have to take a day off of work when maybe they can't. So we'll be continuing on in 2013 to expand the services offered at our East County Courthouse so that people can receive justice here in our community.
That's great. You're running for re-election. What should we expect from you?
Jobs, education, and public safety. I'll start with public safety. You know, we found out just a couple of months ago that some victims of the jogger rapist would not be allowed to testify at his parole hearing. And we also know that 2 years ago, one of his victims was re-traumatized by having to go through that process of testifying to keep him in prison and to keep him away from our community. And as I delved into parole and the hearings process, I saw that there were some glaring errors. And so my bill is ready to go, and we'll be moving forward in 2013 to protect our community from victims being re-traumatized and criminals being released too early. Secondly, on the area of jobs, we know that in the enterprise zone there's an opportunity to create what's called the Troutdale Energy Center. And this is a facility that will create a couple of dozen new jobs at an average salary of $90,000. Now, when I first heard about that, one of the things I asked them was, well, where do you train your employees? And they didn't have a place. And so I suggested that they talk with Mountain Community College. And this is a national company, and we started to lay that foundation so that people in East County can be trained here to work at this facility. We also know that small businesses require money. They need capital to hire employees. And so I have a bill that will encourage investment here in Oregon instead of investments in the stock markets. We're going to encourage people to sell their stocks and invest in the corner store so that the corner store, the small business that's the backbone of our recovery, has the opportunity to hire our neighbors.
I like the sound of that. Well, if you'd like to support Matt Wand, please visit his Facebook page, Matt Wand for East County. We thank him very much for his time this evening. It's been fun getting to know how you're going to support us in District 49. You can also visit mattwandforeastcounty.com, and I encourage you to get out and vote this year. I'm very proud of you, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
is a big deal and one of the most powerful things you can do. But deep down, people vote because...
I vote for my family.
I vote because every voice does matter.
Because my grandmother couldn't.
Because democracy only works if you participate.
I vote because if I want my voice to be heard, the first thing I must do is vote.
I vote for more bike lanes.
For cleaner streams.
For more jobs.
For the future of the arts.
I vote because I want a say in where my tax dollars go.
Because of all the women who ensure my right to vote.
Because I did last year.
Because it's easy.
I vote because it's my civic duty.
And I vote because I can. Register, engage, vote. It's in your hands.
The League of Women Voters makes history.
Our country would not be the same without their dedication.
Formed by women who organized to win women the right to vote.
It is now a co-ed organization.
Studying, informing, and acting.
Nonpartisan.
Grassroots.
Influential.
Taking political stands on many issues.
The League of Women Voters encourages all citizens to be informed and active in government.
Join the League of Women Voters of East Multnomah County in making history today.
Hello everyone, welcome to Election Speakout. I am State Senator Lori Monis Anderson and the only nurse in the Oregon State Legislature. I represent Gresham, Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview. And today I want to talk about education. Over the last few years, we have been in a severe recession, and this has severely impacted how we fund our public safety, our schools, and human services. This funding comes from income taxes. Because so many people have been out of work, there has not been enough revenue to fund our vital services and to support the existing service levels. We have balanced our state budget, which is a good thing, but we cannot continue to cut education and lay off teachers and increase class sizes. So education has to be our first priority. Education is so important for the economy. We have to have a good, well-trained workforce in order to meet the needs of businesses, as well as to meet the needs of businesses who would like to locate here. Our children have to have a good learning environment, and that comes from a well-funded public education system. Only then is our economy going to recover. I have invited Molly Troutman to talk with us. She is a second grade teacher, and I am so excited that she's going to be able to tell you a little bit about what's happening to her in her classroom and in her school. Welcome, Molly. I'm so happy you're able to join us. Can you just tell us about yourself, about how long you've been in teaching, where you got your teaching degree, what grades you've taught?
Thanks for having me, Lori, and thanks for the work that you do in the Senate and city council members and board members. I appreciate that, all that work for the communities. Well, I went to Oregon State, graduated, and taught out in Sandy for 9 years, which is now the Oregon Trail School District. During that time, I got a master's degree in education, and for the last 14 or 15 years, I've been teaching for Centennial. I've taught kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, so you can see that my heart is really with the little kids. It's really also with public education. I think that is one of our greatest state and national resources. You can create such a broad, wonderful community in our classrooms, but parents need to feel that their children are safe, that we know them, and that we value them.
I just admire you so much for wanting to teach the little ones, because it's so critical for us to be able to make sure that they get a good start, because if they get a good start, they're going to succeed down the line. As you know, we're coming out of a very deep recession, and the cuts to education have been significant. And I believe that we have to get our priorities straight, and we have to fund education better than we are now. So let's talk about class size. How many students do you have this year? And tell us how class size impacts your teaching.
Well, this year I have 28 second graders. In other years I've had 20, 22, and that's just been a terrific size because you could get to know children, you could get to know their strengths, you could get to know their families. With 28, it's a little trickier. You're teaching kind of to the middle, and you might lose the little ones on the edges of the classroom. Our fifth grades last year had 39 fifth graders, and that really becomes an almost impossible task.
Oh, I would agree. Do you have any aides?
No, we do not have assistants in the classroom. You might see an assistant occasionally, but that's usually there to help a special ed student. For the most part, it's 28 plus me.
So if you have some behavior problems, that makes it tough because you have to spend a lot of time working with those that may have behaviors. So everyone's in the same class, is that correct?
Right, everybody's with me, and the classroom teacher is really the center of what's expected.
How has the budget cuts impacted the learning environment over the past years, and what about the resources? Are there things that you did years ago that maybe are now gone? I've heard about PE being cut, and I've heard about music being cut. Just talk to us a little bit about the changes that you've seen.
Well, yeah, PE and music have been cut. My children probably get to go to PE 3 times a month at 25 minutes at a time, which is not a lot for physical conditioning. They go to music 3 times a month, 25 minutes at a time, which is not a lot for developing a musical talent. And the other person that they that we have not had as much with is our counselors, because the counselors could work with those little behavior problems or students that are troubled on a one-on-one basis, which would be difficult for me to do in the regular classroom.
Wow. I remember I would so look forward to recess and PE and loved choir. And I'm just really sad that we've had to do this. So let's talk a little bit about the student impacts. I have talked to so many parents and teachers, and they talk about class size, and you know, having large classes, and I'm wondering, how can the students learn? What is the impact on the students? Tell me how this impacts students.
Well, we know that students need relationships with positive and supportive adults in order to grow and blossom, besides their parents. And a teacher could be that person if we could know them. But when a teacher has to divide herself that many ways, their relationships don't develop, they're not as strong, so they're kind of compromised. And a student might need one little thing clarified before they can move forward, but when there's that many students, that's tricky.
And there's so many different levels of abilities and skills. How can you hone in on what do you do to know which student skill they need to learn? I mean, do you have to do that assessment? Well, we'll get to testing in just a minute then. Well, let's just start now. You know, I, of course, had my parents were teachers. My dad was a teacher at Gresham High School, and my mother was a teacher at Dexter McCarty, and then my daughter now is a teacher. And just the other day, a teacher in the Gresham Barlow School District was saying she spent all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then I finally got her on the phone at 8:15. She was just getting home on Monday night when I talked to her. And she said she teaches second grade, and she has so many in her classroom, and she is now trying to figure out what skills each student needs to learn, because she has to get their scores up. So this testing that you have to have on all the students, how has that impact of testing affected you in your teaching and in your classroom?
Well, she's right. We not only have to get the scores up, but we look at the skills individually. You can't just say this child needs a little trouble with reading. You have to figure out where's the trouble occurring. And so there's a lot of data collection and data analysis in order to make that happen. Testing is another pressure. Class size and the home lives that some students come from, you know, where we're trying to help support them, testing becomes one more pressure. They test reading, writing, and math, so we are prescribed and given information about teaching those things in depth, and we lose minutes for some of the creative things, science, or at the middle school, some students are limited in their electives because they have to get caught up in reading science and reading, writing, and math. Oregon is moving towards a growth model, which I think is a good idea because it doesn't set an arbitrary target. It rather looks just like we would with a child. Look at where you are and then see what growth we can expect and maybe work a little, you know, work towards that. So I really appreciate that we're moving towards that growth model.
So where do the students test? Do you have computers in the classroom, or do you have a lab that you take the students to? Where do they go to be tested?
Tricky because second graders aren't tested on the state tests yet. Third graders, starting in third grade, they do. They go to the computer lab. And you have to remember that's time out of the school day. And so they go to a computer lab, they're tested there. In the second grade, we're testing all the time for the different skills, you know. So we check where we do a pre-test and we find out where everybody is, and then we do the curriculum, the instruction, and then we do a post-test, and then we find out who still needs what, and then we go from there. But it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation.
And it seems like a lot of time. Oh,
right.
Wow. Well, at the state level, there's talk about forming an early learning council to focus on coordinating health care and nutrition and readiness to learn programs. And teachers have told me that testing takes so much time, so I am concerned, or I would like to know about how the students, at what levels are they coming into school? You have so many different levels in the classroom, and so has this changed? Have you seen that change when they get to second grade? Are there still a lot of discrepancies on abilities at second grade?
Well, of course, if you back it up and think about kindergarten, students come into kindergarten with such a wide range of experiences, wide opportunities that people have talked to them and their vocabulary has developed or not. They come in with having used scissors and markers and pencils before, or they haven't. And some students come in and school is in a whole new language to them. So we can gather these little ones up and we can move them forward, but it's much easier to do with 20 little kindergartners than it is with 26 or 27 little kindergartners. Oregon is looking at, and I think slowly, moving towards an all-day kindergarten program, and that would be very exciting to have happen.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Molly, for joining me today. You have certainly educated me about your perspectives, and I just so admire what you've been able to do. You have reinforced my priorities. I'm so frustrated that some in Salem want to lay off teachers while at the same time giving tax breaks to big corporations. I want to continue. I want to go back to Salem and continue funding our schools, keep investing in job creation and improving quality care, and continuing to fund public safety. I am State Senator Lori Monis Anderson. Thank you for joining us on Election Speak Out. You can contact me anytime on my website. Thank you and good night.
Voting is a big deal. Voting is one of the most powerful things you can do. But first, you've got to register to vote. And second, you might want to do some research before you fill out that ballot. It used to be that in order to vote in Oregon, you just had to show up at a polling station on Election Day. Across the country, people in other states still do, waiting sometimes 4, 5, or even 6 hours in line just to express their opinion and to do their civic duty. But we do things different here in Oregon, and we vote differently too. Here in Oregon, you can get your ballot mailed directly to you, so you can fill it out at home, voter guide on hand, taking as much time as you like. And all you have to do is mail it back. But even if you slack on that, you can still drop it off at a ballot drop box as late as 8 p.m. on Election Day. And Oregon makes it really easy to register. But first, you have to ask yourself, are you an Oregon resident? Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you at least 17 years old? Check mark next to all of those? Okay, let's talk about registering to vote.
In the last few years, organizations like the Bus Project have worked hard to make it embarrassingly easy to register to vote. You can register to vote online at OregonVotes.org or through just about any governmental organization imaginable.
Signing up for classes? Stop by your student government office to pick up a registration form.
Taking your driver's test or waiting to get your license renewed? Register while in line at the DMV.
Checking out a book? Register at your local library.
See these guys on the street? They'll get you registered to vote in seconds.
That dude who's always trying to get you to sign his petition? He can register you too.
On government assistance, you can get registered to vote when you get Oregon Health Plan, food stamps, unemployment insurance, or other services.
You can also register at the county elections office. And if you lose your ballot or forget to mail it, you can drop it off or pick up a new one there. All you need is a valid state ID, a driver's license, a learner's permit or ID card, or your social security number and a valid mailing address. Want more information? Check out the Bus Project, Rock the Vote, or Project Vote Smart. We'll not only get you all the info you need, we'll even remind you close to Election Day.
That was a lot of information in just a little time. So to simplify, go to OregonVotes.org to register to vote. And remember, you can't vote until you're 18, but you can pre-register when you're 17. And because Oregon votes by mail, you need to re-register every time you move. If you need to find out where you can drop off your ballot, you can find the closest drop box at sos.state.or.us/dropbox. So by now, you're on your way to voting. You're registered, you know how to find a drop box, but of course, you owe it to yourself to be an informed voter. So first, what are you voting for?
State governor.
Oregon Supreme Court.
The President of the United States.
Senator.
City councilor, county commissioner.
U.S. representative.
Now, when most people think of voting, they think of the really big elections, the presidential election for one. But did you know that elections are happening all the time in Oregon? Not only that, most of these other elections are arguably more important than the presidential election. The president makes a lot of important decisions, but your state and local governments, these folks make decisions that affect you every single day.
Our legislators decide on most of the funding for our public schools and can raise and lower state taxes without a public vote.
Your city and county commissioners decide how to fund and operate local services like police and fire.
Another huge way that laws can be made and changed in Oregon is through ballot measures. Ballot measures are a way that citizens can change law directly.
Have an idea for a law or want to get rid of a law that you don't like?
If you can get enough Oregonians to sign a petition backing your idea, you can get it on the ballot and potentially get that law changed.
But just because a measure gets on the ballot doesn't necessarily make it a good idea. You want to think through those ballot measures, because sometimes powerful interests will put a measure on the ballot to benefit themselves, but it could end up hurting you.
Luckily, the state of Oregon puts out a guide every election season, and that'll give you the lowdown on all of the ballot measures and candidates you'll be voting on. And you can always hit the web, where dozens of groups and your fellow citizens are eager to tell you just what they think of every candidate and every measure on the ballot.
Me, personally, I like to feel engaged with the whole voting thing. So I like talking it through with my friends and family and doing my own research. So when it comes to filling out that ballot, I'm really in the know. It's your voice, your civic duty, your right. But deep down, people vote because...
I vote for my family.
I vote because every voice does matter.
Because my grandmother couldn't.
Because democracy only works if you participate.
I vote because if I want my voice to be heard, the first thing I must do is vote.
I vote for more bike lanes.
For cleaner streams.
For more jobs.
For the future of the arts.
I vote because I want a say in where my tax dollars go.
Because of all the women who ensure my right to vote.
Because I did last year.
Because it's easy.
I vote because it's my civic duty.
And I vote because I can. But it's really up to you. It's easy to get registered. If in doubt, ask a friend to help. There's loads of information out there about who and what you'll be voting for come election time. Register, engage, vote. It's in your hands.
Yo voto porque quiero hacer una diferencia.
Por el futuro.
Porque es mi deber.
Yo voto porque es fácil.
Porque la democracia funciona.
Porque yo quiero que mi voz se oiga.
Yo voto porque sí se puede.